Hi guys, Dr. Rob Barrington here with some more nutrition advice. L-tryptophan, it's an essential amino acid. If you go into a health food shop and you try and find it, you won't find it on the shelves with all the other amino acids that are found in supplements. The reason for this is that in the United Kingdom, the United States, L-tryptophan is banned from sale because it was linked to an outbreak of eosinophilia myalgia syndrome in the United States in 1989. Now, these people took L-tryptophan and they developed EMS, and it was known that this supplement that they were taking caused their problems, and therefore the authorities decided to ban L-tryptophan. But is that logical? Let's think about this. L-tryptophan is an essential amino acid. That means that without it in the diet, humans will develop a disease and die. It's the same as all the vitamins, it's the same as all the minerals, it's the same as the essential fatty acids, it's the same as oxygen and water. It is an essential nutrient to humans. Without L-tryptophan in the diet, we can't manufacture it in our bodies. Without it in the diet, we die. Is it likely that these supplements of L-tryptophan were the cause of this EMS? Well, sure, the supplements caused the EMS. There is evidence that these people were all taking L-tryptophan. But were they taking a particular batch of L-tryptophan? Well, yes, they were. Scientists have looked into this. Obviously, all the authorities have looked into it. And it is known that the batch of L-tryptophan that these people who developed EMS were taking came from a laboratory in Japan called Showa. And it was found that what actually caused the EMS was a contaminant that got into the supplement during manufacture. So to ban L-tryptophan based on the fact that some laboratory in Japan has a sloppy manufacturing process is a knee-jerk reaction in extreme. Now, if we go to the nutritional literature, what we find is that we look in the Journal of Rheumatology in 1996, there is a study that actually investigated whether it was likely that this batch of L-tryptophan from Showa was the cause of the EMS outbreak. And they used something called the Hill criteria, which is a set of criteria. There are 9 criteria that allow you to determine whether an association has a causal effect. And they found that there was reason to suspect that indeed this batch, this contaminated batch of L-tryptophan from Showa was actually the cause of the EMS. So there is scientific evidence that L-tryptophan itself was not the problem. It was this contaminated batch of L-tryptophan from Showa. And if we look in medical records, there are really no other records of L-tryptophan causing EMS apart from this small outbreak. So it makes sense, it's logical that this wasn't the L-tryptophan, which is, after all, let's not forget, an essential amino acid. It is logical that this was caused by a contaminated batch. However, that doesn't stop the fact existing that you cannot buy L-tryptophan. And L-tryptophan is a very useful supplement for those people who want to find a natural way of relaxing. It's a very useful way of increasing serotonin levels. It's a happy amino acid in that way. It boosts serotonin level, and that improves mood. But unfortunately, the people who run this world, the authorities, are not as clever as the people who inhabit it, because some clever person has realised that there is a plant chemical, 5-hydroxytryptophan, that is identical chemically to a hydroxylated version of tryptophan that we produce in our brains. Now, in order to be able to understand why 5-hydroxytryptophan can substitute for L-tryptophan as a mood enhancer and as a sleep aid, we have to understand a little bit about the biochemistry of how L-tryptophan is converted into serotonin in the brain. So when we ingest L-tryptophan, it's absorbed from the gut, passes into the circulation, passes into the blood, and from there it travels to the blood-brain barrier, where it crosses the blood-brain barrier via the large neutral amino acid transporter, and once it's inside the brain, it gets taken up by neurons. Within the neurons, there are enzymes called tryptophan hydroxylases, and they hydroxylate tryptophan to produce 5-hydroxytryptophan. There is then another step, which is actually a decarboxylation, and that is performed by the enzyme L-aromatic amino acid decarboxylase, and that produces serotonin. So there are two steps. There is a hydroxylation step and a decarboxylation step in order to be able to get L-tryptophan to be synthesized into serotonin. Now, if we take 5-hydroxytryptophan in the diet, we can get it from the graphonia seed, which is a plant-based version of 5-hydroxytryptophan, which is identical to the 5-hydroxytryptophan that we produce in our brains. When we consume that 5-hydroxytryptophan, we're missing out the first step, we're missing out the hydroxylation step, and that 5-hydroxytryptophan can feed into that neuronal pathway in order to be able to be converted into serotonin. So it just needs to be decarboxylated, and we have serotonin. That serotonin boosts mood, and some of the serotonin is converted into melatonin, and melatonin is a sleep-inducing hormone. It's the hormone that induces sleep. When it starts to get dark outside, when the lights go dim, we start to produce melatonin, and that's what sends us to sleep. So this is why tryptophan causes an elevation in mood, because it elevates serotonin levels in the brain, and this is why it induces sleep, because the serotonin is subsequently converted into melatonin. So by taking 5-hydroxytryptophan in a supplement, which we can get from the graphonia seed, we can actually substitute for L-tryptophan in the diet, and therefore we still have access to a useful supplement, even though we can't access L-tryptophan. Now, obviously, there are other ways of boosting serotonin levels. If you eat, for example, a carbohydrate snack before bed, that is also an effective way of boosting serotonin levels. It's because of the insulin and the way it interacts with the various amino acids. It causes an increase in L-tryptophan in our blood, and that increases the L-tryptophan passing into the brain. So if you don't want to take a supplement, you can actually still benefit from the increase in L-tryptophan through taking a carbohydrate snack before bed, and that will have a very, very similar effect as to taking a supplement. So although L-tryptophan is banned, you can't buy it, there are ways of boosting serotonin naturally through the diet, and I would suggest that if you consider yourself in requirement of something to help you sleep at night, maybe you're feeling a bit down and you want to boost your mood, I would suggest that you have a look, do some research into 5-hydroxytryptophan, and also do some research on my blog about boosting L-tryptophan levels through eating carbohydrates. It's quite complex biochemistry, but it's fairly simple. Just eat some carbohydrates before you go to bed. It will increase your blood levels of L-tryptophan, and that will have a very similar effect. So these are some things you can try. Obviously, don't forget there are many herbs that also induce sleep, but it's worth trying 5-hydroxytryptophan. Generally, studies that have looked at it show that it does work. It works as well, if not better, than L-tryptophan, because it's a step closer to serotonin in the brain. And although you shouldn't rely on these chemicals, some people do have chemical imbalances, and supplementing with substances from herbs is a very good way of avoiding pharmaceuticals that may have more damaging effects to your health in the long term. There are no indications that 5-hydroxytryptophan supplementation causes any negative effects. Certainly taking carbohydrates before you go to bed in order to boost your brain levels of L-tryptophan is going to have no negative effects at all. I would say that's the first port of call. Take some carbohydrates. If you find that doesn't work and you're still not sleeping and you still need some help sleeping, check out 5-hydroxytryptophan, do some research. Always read the label before you take any supplements, and make sure you know what you're doing. But it's a very safe supplement, and I would recommend it for those people having difficulty sleeping.